Hello everyone in Facebook land, it's Tona Brown. I'm here with the author of
Running from My Shadow.
There you go, with Troy Kennedy. We're going to talk about his phenomenal book that I definitely would like for more people to read and to get into, because it's very, very deep, if I may say so myself. It's a deep book, and I want people to know why you wrote the book and what you want the world to know about this book.
Well, we're in a place right now where we're talking about trans women. We're talking about the men who are attracted to trans women, whether you call them trans attracted men, trans affirming, trans amorous, trans loving, or what have you. But you don't hear our stories.
Right.
You don't hear what, how we men think, how we feel, and how we go through our transition.
Okay.
That's something that is never talked about. We men don't talk about it amongst ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very, very important. Because I'm well seasoned,
Right.
I'm an older gentleman. When I started back in the mid-'80s dating trans women, there was absolutely nothing out there for me to grasp, to help me learn, where I was, what this was about, where I was. So, I struggled, and I struggled mightily.
Mm-hmm.
I hurt a lot of women that were in my life. It wasn't pretty.
Well, let's go back to that. You said something about men transitioning. I think that is such a foreign concept that you just blurted out flippantly. But explain that to us, because you do talk about this in your book.
Well, just like women of trans experience transition, it takes time. It takes, it's a mental, but for trans women, it's a physical
Right.
transition, it's a physical transformation. There's a huge difference between men who date trans women
Mm-hmm.
versus, a trans woman in their transitions.
Mm-hmm.
Our transition is here,
Okay.
but we don't have the mentors. We don't communicate. We don't have the support groups. We don't have anything to help us get to the next step, into the next step.
And why do you think that is?
Because of the demonization of trans people, trans women, and trans men. That because of European colonialism, because of the Abrahamic religions, they buried the stories of trans people throughout history.
Mm-hmm.
Trans people have existed since the dawn of man.
Yes, we have.
Trans people were viewed as shamans. They were shamans. They were celebrated as healers. They were considered closer to God.
Right.
And yet, you don't read about those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very important. And what I did in the book was to go back and to talk about some of those things, to talk about the different cultures around the world that celebrated trans women. There are some that still do.
Yes, they do.
Even here in North America, Native Americans, there are some tribes that view as many as 5 different genders.
Mm-hmm.
But so many people, especially when you talk about religion and you talk about European colonialism.
So we know what you mean.
But when you add all that in Western culture, they would, you'd have people swear up and down, especially the Hoteps, these new black, pro-black groups of mostly men who seem to think that this is the evil of the
Right.
white man.
And some new phenomenon.
Yes, and some new phenomenon. And that's not the truth. And it's time that the truth be told. It's time these stories be told. And it's time for us to help with the healing.
Right. But what I think is unique about your story is simply that you're not just focused on trans women. You're talking about your specific story. How you came to terms with loving yourself as a person, understanding your attraction, understanding that there's nothing wrong with that attraction, And also getting into the history of everything you just mentioned. So I think that is one of the reasons why I appreciate your book and why I want to support your book and support the movement that you and so many others are slowly starting to come together and form into something great. That's why we did the panel, and we're going to do the panel tomorrow at 12 o'clock. We're going to revisit the conversation we did for on Conversations with Tona Brown. You guys are going to have to check that out. And we're going to talk about, with a panel of gentlemen, we're going to talk about those sort of things. But as far as your book is concerned, what I loved about it, and just reading some of the things, and thank you for mentioning me in the forward, I really appreciate that, and our friendship and all that good stuff. But I was so pleased to see a man stand up for women like me. And I think that for so many trans women, how many times can you say that a man will publicly stand up and say that I love you specifically? And I don't feel any shame or weirdness in that. And I would like to see more trans women have more pride in themselves and to say, yes, I am a trans woman. I'm not a cis woman. And I want a man in my life that appreciates all of me. And that is what you are doing. You and so many of the guys that we're getting together on this panel, you guys are showing the world that there's nothing wrong with the women that we love. And so for that, I want to thank you. So many trans women want to thank you for that, because we don't have that. We don't have it. So not only am I seeing your journey, but as you're explaining your journey, I'm also feeling some validation as well. And that touches my heart and my soul to see. So for that, again, is another reason why I'm supporting you, and I'm supporting this book, and I'm supporting more men getting out here and talking about this stuff. It's not easy to talk about. That's true. You know, we've gotten a lot of criticism within the community for having these conversations. But right now is the time, if there's ever been a time, and it's time to support the men in the movement. We need, first of all, we need more to come into the movement, but we have to give them that space. And what your book is going to do, I feel, is going to touch millions of people, because we never know who really is out here sleeping with, dating, or being friends with trans women. We will never know because of the way society is. So yes, you might be the first one to come out with a book like this, but any trans woman will tell you that there are so many men out here who are struggling with this attraction. Not only do they need to read this book, but trans women need to read your book. They need to understand that there is someone, if it's only Troy Kennedy, and of course we know it's not, but if there's one person out there that is going to say, I love all of you, I love you for you, and there's nothing wrong with you being who you are.
Well, and the other side of that coin is this is for cis women as well. I have a Facebook friend who, her and her husband broke up because he was cheating on her with a trans woman. Mm-hmm. She was unbelievably angry about it, didn't understand it, and really was, it really caused a rift in their family.
Mm. Can imagine.
And so she, just being my friend and watching what I post and the discussions that I got into, made her start to think. And then she started watching my videos on YouTube, and then she started to understand that it wasn't this evil, deviant thing or something that was unusual. Mm-hmm. She started to realize that, hey, wait a minute, you know, this is something that does happen. So unfortunately, there aren't a lot of men who are going to speak up.
Right.
Unfortunately, there are a lot of women in this community who think that it's a problem with men who speak up or men who embrace the fact that we date women of trans experience.
Yeah, I can't relate nor understand that.
It bothers me, but those aren't the kind of women that this is for. If you're not proud of who you are, then that's not my problem. That's your problem, and you need to seek some help. Yeah. I'm doing this to help a lot of guys who make a lot of mistakes, and a lot of their mistakes aren't malicious. It's just they don't know. They have nothing. They don't have mentors. They don't have anything to look at to say, hey, you know, what does all of this mean? Taking that time to find out, or giving them the opportunity to learn, and to read and to see. And that's why I started doing my YouTube series. It's like, you know, hey, you know, hey guys, look, you know, you're not alone, you know.
Yeah, and I definitely want to recommend people to follow you on YouTube. How can they get to you on YouTube?
You can just look up D. Kennedy.
D. Kennedy.
Or type in "Ask a Trans Attracted Man," even though some people don't like that term.
Right. You know, and I think that's another whole issue. And you know, and you mentioned something and earlier about it's not your job, and I want to touch on that as well. It is not your job. Your job is to share your experience. It's the same way as trans women. We want the world to understand who we are, and we've shared our experience, and now the world understands a little better who we are. It's not your job to worry about what they have to say.
But in saying that, they don't know who we are, because every time a man, especially a celebrity, is you know, connected with a trans woman in some way, shape, or form. Right. The first thing he does is either I didn't know, or there's some reason why that he was tricked.
He was deceived.
And that is one of the things that bothers me so much, because you know, men are out there pursuing women who are trans. They know that they're trans women.
That's right.
This is not something that they are trying to do, or that trans women are trying to do to trick them. They don't have to trick them.
But what I don't ever understand, because even in my own family, I've had people send me little messages and say things, and say, you know, make sure you're telling people. Why do you think it's so hard for people to believe that a man like you would be into trans women?
But that goes back to every time a celebrity or an athlete or someone of prominence is connected with a trans woman, the first thing they do is deny and or say that you know, they were tricked, or you know, it was not that, you know, I found her attractive and I got with her.
Right, and we fell in love.
And we fell in love, or whatever. They never admit that. And so by not doing that, by not you know, by continuing to lie, continuing to pretend like that that they were tricked, and that these evil trans women have done them so wrong, it continues with the stigma, you know, and it ostracizes trans women.
Right.
And that's not fair.
That's
you know, I'm really battling not to call those guys what they are, because they are cowards. Because you are actively going after these girls. You know, a lot of them are paying
for their services.
Paying some good money.
That's right.
And yet, when they get caught, oh no, oh poor me, I was tricked. I was deceived. But she has 8,000 texts from you.
Right.
You know, over the last 5 years.
And pictures
and all of this.
Right.
And so again, it's to tell a story that's there.
Right.
You know, I want to walk you through, you know, especially because, you know, for me, and how long ago it was, being roughly 30 years ago, when there was nothing out there.
Right.
And so you're walking this path. You think you're walking this path alone. And I know some people who are very close to me who we were walking side by side, but you live in the shadows, and that's why I call it running from my shadow. You live in the shadows, you duck and you dodge and you hide, and you don't realize you can't run from your shadow. Your shadow is always going to be there. There's a shadow behind me.
Right. I love that title.
And it's there. It's following you, and you know, you can't run from it. So you have to embrace it.
So what are you recommending to these men in terms of how to overcome this, and You know, you mentioned a lot. We're going to also be talking about this tomorrow when we have the panel. But you mentioned fear a lot. But do you have anything that you could say to men who are struggling and who are on the DL and all of that?
You know, a lot of the fear that I had was imagined. I thought of what people would think about me. I thought that what people would say and how they would react would be so unbelievably negative that, you know, it caused me to go deeper and deeper into a shell.
That's really interesting. So you feel that most of it is in their head.
Well, I know for me, I won't pretend, you know, okay, for example, with my family, I thought that my parents would really, you know, treat me, you know, they would just handle it in a very negative way.
Right.
Especially my father, you know. My father just turned 79 years old.
Wow.
Happy birthday, Dad.
Happy birthday, Daddy.
He just turned 79 years old.
Okay.
You would think that a man of that age wouldn't embrace something like this.
Okay.
I was wrong. My mother, I was wrong. You know, I have children. You know, my children, you know, are grown. You know, I have a son who's almost 30. He was, at the time, this was 15 years ago when I hate to use the term come out, but when I started to walk in my truth.
Right.
And, you know, he struggled with it for a little short period of time, but that's my son, that's my dog, that's my, you know, he has his father's back as I have his. My younger son, the same thing. He was, you know, he spent years with the trans woman who was raising him as a stepmother.
Wow.
So,
and you have family members that you know.
Yeah, so there's so many people who are, you know, this isn't something that people act like it doesn't happen or it's rare. It happens all the time. But what does happen more is that men hide, men lie, men allow fear.
Well, you know, you did in your book, you have a story about how in your circle of friends, family, and others, you were all interconnected, but no one was talking. And certain key people in your life also were trans attracted. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, you know, there are people who I was close to who have come to me on a number of occasions and said, hey, you know, I want to talk to you about it. And I instantly thought it was going to be something negative, and I was almost ready to punch him in the mouth. And then they say, hey, I met a girl in college, or you know, I met a girl a couple of years ago, or you know, but I couldn't handle it, you know. And then it's like, you know, but I'm seeing you, and I wish I had the strength that you had. You know, I've had people who I've worked with I've had so many different men come up to me, you know, from you know, family members, close friends, co-workers, you know, people from all walks of life.
Wow.
I've seen people from all walks of life, men from all walks of life. You know, famous people, celebrities. You know, I've been at parties and you know, my girl knows his girl, so he knows that since my girl knows his girl, that I know what's going on.
Right.
And then he just kind of going.
And in the book, you don't out.
I don't because it's not my job to out anyone.
Right.
But my job is to tell my story.
Right.
My job is to help people get an understanding, help men look and say, because there are a lot of times when I talk to guys, I've counseled dozens upon dozens upon dozens of guys, and they start to tell their story, and then I cut them off, and then I finish telling them because I know how they feel. And they go, yeah, and then you did this, and then, wow, yeah. It's, you know, our stories are the same because, again, all of the decisions they are making are driven by fear. And again, a lot of that fear is, if you step up and stand up, you know, what is somebody going to say? You know, I was actually threatened by a woman of trans experience. I worked in a bunch of different malls. I was a district manager, and I was talking to her, and she kind of wanted me to hook up with her, but she wasn't my type. And she threatened me. She said, well, I'm going to tell your employees.
Oh, my. Okay.
And I said, well, really? I said, okay. And I said, well, so I called my manager over, and I asked her, you know, and talked about my ex-girlfriend.
Right.
You know, and finally she said, oh, yeah, well, she's trans. Yeah, so what? And I called over a couple of other employees, and I called over a couple of people from a couple of other stores. I said, so how are you going to embarrass me? You know, I'm not embarrassed about who I am. And when you embrace who you are, who can, why you can't embarrass me.
That's right.
You can't make me feel bad. I walk in my truth, and I walk proudly in my truth.
Right.
You know.
But how did you get there? And I think that it's the same reason why so many women of trans experience consistently write me and say, how do you wake up every day and love yourself? Okay, but how is it for a trans attracted man? How did you come to terms after everything you've gone through? And you do very descriptively talk about those things in your book. In the end, how did you get to this place of acceptance?
I was put in a position where I pretty much had to choose between a woman of trans experience and a cis woman.
Okay.
And I chose a trans woman, and like the movie Harlem Nights, I pretty much said, hey, put your mama on the phone. Yeah, it's me. I ain't never coming home. The experience was almost like that. You know, I was tired. I was tired of running. I was tired of the games. In the book? It's in the book. It's in the book. It's you have to read it. I'm not going to give it to you.
Of course,
You have to read it, but I was put in a position where I had to choose. I chose a trans woman, and I knew then and there that that's what I preferred. I love women, but I prefer women with trans experience, and I finally accepted that there's nothing wrong with it. So,
how did you do that?
It was the situation. The situation.
So that was the catalyst to it. But then after you come to terms and you realize that I have a preference for women of trans experience, how did you come to terms with that? You know, as Oprah says, that aha moment that says, okay, this is where I am. But what I find very interesting about your story, and even for those who should follow him on YouTube, is that you are also very well spiritually connected with who you are. You live in your authentic truth. So therefore, there has to be something that you've done along the way to get you to this point.
Well, I guess the only thing I can say is that I finally got comfortable enough to look myself in the eye, to look in the mirror, and tell myself, you know, that this is who I am, and I'm not ashamed of it. You know, I had to stop being afraid. I had to stop allowing fear to control me. You know, I got divorced a couple of times, cost me a lot of money, cost me a lot of heartache and headache. And, you know, being in that Mobius loop, and you know, insanity is repeating the same behaviors over and over again, and expecting different results. I just couldn't keep going down that path. I couldn't keep going down a path that the same things would happen, that I would, you know, be involved with a cis woman, I would start cheating her, I would get caught, and then I'd go through all this drama, then I'd say I wouldn't mess with trans women anymore, and I wouldn't for a while, and then I would do it again, and then I'd be sneaking, and then I get caught, and it's just over and over and over again. At some point, you're either going to stop doing that, or or you know, somebody, you know, because you end up hurting yourself, and you end up hurting the women that you're involved with.
Well, you and I both know that we both know some guys. I used to have a group called Women of Distinction. You know, I've known you for over 10 years, and we know some guys who are still 10, 15, 20 years later, they're still doing the same thing. What is the difference between the path that they're on? And I do feel that some of them are still searching and do want to come to terms with this. What are they not doing?
Well, I think,
what would you recommend to them?
I think most of them, the women that they're involved with sexually. You know, I have a couple of friends, and we'll call one out, Chanel.
Hi, Chanel.
I have a couple of friends who, you know, and then there's been a few others who I wasn't involved with sexually, who held my feet to the fire.
Okay.
You know, we were able to have open and honest discussions, and even when I would try to run some bull crap on them, they would, you know, and even with you, you know, I mean, and at one point you know, you actually walked away from me.
Right.
Because I was doing some stuff that was really harming myself. And, you know, as my friend, as somebody who loves me dearly, you felt that, you know, you were going to just let me do that.
Right.
And you were going to back away and hope that I got myself together. And once I did, you know, you welcomed me back with open arms.
Right.
And it was like I never left. But
Right.
I had friends who happen to be women of trans experience who I could talk to and not have sex in a way, because, you know, the one component, and, you know, a lot of people don't like to talk about it, a lot of men don't like to talk about it, is that sexual energy that they feel towards trans women is very, very strong and very powerful.
Okay.
And it makes it difficult. So, you know, you have to get to a point where you can look at yourself and love yourself enough to say, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this to myself, and I can't do this to anyone who I'm bringing into my circle. Because if I say I love you, you know, whether you're a cis woman or a trans woman, and I'm doing things purposefully, you know, or even not purposefully, but I'm hurting you, and I'm doing it over and over and over again, but I don't love you, and I don't even love myself because I'm hurting myself as well.
Right. 3 minutes?
So, I mean, so basically, I just want guys to take a step back, you know, and to make a decision.
Yeah.
Are you going to continue down this path? Or are you going to love yourself enough, love the people around you enough to walk in your truth?
Yeah, and lastly, what I want to know is a lot of you guys are starting to come into the movement, and we've seen from the Creating Change fiasco, we've seen that is a challenge. So what do you recommend to these guys who want to help, who really want to speak on behalf of trans attracted men?
Just to live in your truth. The truth is going to set you free. Mm-hmm. You know, they made a lot of claims about me that weren't true. You know, I'm going after everyone who decided to go with those lies and to defame me and to, you know, assassinate my character. You know, because at the end of the day, you know, I'm me. And, you know, I know the truth, and they know the truth, and the law knows the truth. So,
all right now.
You know, so, you know, I'm going to come out, brush my shoulders, and I'm going to make it happen.
Well, thank you so much, Troy, for coming.
You know I love you, and I ain't shaking your hand. I love you.
Love you too. Thank you so much for joining me. Please check out his YouTube and his channel, and get this book when this book is out. It's called again?
Running from My Shadow. Hopefully by the end of May, it'll be out.
Put a plug up for tomorrow.
Oh, and tomorrow at 12 p.m. we will be live streaming. We'll let all of you know. Check me out here on Facebook. It's a panel of trans attractive men. We're going to revisit the conversation.
Gotta come for that. You gotta come for that, because we're gonna blow your socks off.
Oh yes.